One, you're sleeping again. Let me get my chalk. No, that's right. He left the room. Okay, fine. And he even told me he was going to leave the room. Good. Okay. All right. So Lawrence, what did you say? You said C, right? Yeah. But why? Why C? Okay, so non-dealers experience the endowment effect, but dealers do not. So you're feeling pretty confident about the dealer's part. Why would a dealer not experience the endowment effect? So they're not it's not affecting their reference point. They're not thinking of it as something that matters to them because it's part of their endowment. I'm reminded a little bit of the tokens experiment, right? The token is a cash equivalent. To a dealer, the card is essentially a cash equivalent. I mean, there might occasionally be a card where they say, oh, no, that's mine. But by and large, it'll be a cash equivalent. Is that other people's intuition? Okay, and then we want to ask ourselves about the experienced non-dealer traders. And Lawrence was up in the air about that. Anybody want to state a sort of conclusive opinion on that? They know how much things are worth based on their experience. To whom? Worth to whom? Oh, so I see. So they're like, oh, no, I've read John List's book about what things are supposed to be worth. Right, so even though... You've just given two different answers. So let's tease them apart. They also think of them as tokens means, roughly, I think, if I understand Lawrence's answer, that they're expecting to sell them again. Do you agree? A token is a cash equivalent because you redeem it for cash, which is also true of cash, by the way. But the first part, you said something different, right, which is that they're aware of the list price, so why would they be willing to pay more than that? Right? But they might be willing to, it might affect, right, their willingness to accept payment for it shouldn't be affected by what John List says it's worth. It should be determined by how they value it. Right? They might value it because of loss aversion more highly than John List says it's worth to a dealer. So this doesn't really solve the problem. Yeah, they could, yeah. Maybe they just sort of adopt the norms and behaviors of a dealer. They come swaggering in. Let go of my hand, honey. I know this scene. I know these dealers. So there could be all kinds of things going on. Let's see what actually happens. You had a comment?
I think they do look at it like a token. Because, the thing is, in his experiment, all the people did make multiple trades. The difference between, they did 6 trades.
You've read the paper, haven't you? Yeah. Again. No, I'm sorry. I'm harassing you. Because then I don't have something surprising to say.
So, to me, they're already, if you do 60 trades a year,
yeah.
Obviously you're trading out your own collection, so you're not just keeping everything. So
maybe you're just buying all the time. This, by the way, you just had a research idea, and List missed it, okay? Because he should have asked him that exact question. He should have asked him, do you just buy all the time? Like the experienced traders, I think he defined it as 6 or more trades, whatever, per month or year. He should have asked them whether they were all buys or whether they were buying and selling, because that would get to your issue, right? What's your name? Anna? And your name again, sorry, Alex. So you guys going to go off to that paper? Okay. So I can put you in touch with John List, and he can tell you where to go for the shows, and you can take his book with you, and he might even give you some cards. In all seriousness, that's an interesting research idea. Okay. You heard it on the radio. Let's see what happens. Here are the results. Whoops. Here are the results. So this is the percent traded, right? So we're expecting 50% of subjects to trade if there's no endowment effect, okay? Here are the dealers, okay? 45.7%, 43.6%. This p-value, right, that's the probability that was generated by random chance. If that's less than 0.05, we usually say, all right, that's a statistically significant result. This is not remotely statistically significant. So these people are not statistically different from 50%. Right? So he's taking that as evidence of no endowment effect. We've not seen that result anywhere in any of the experiments we've looked at so far. Okay, so this is hugely different, and this is a big deal, right? So this speaks to your point, Lawrence, I think. And what I would, so sorry, I'm getting myself out of order. Then what do we have? Here are the non-dealers, okay? And within non-dealers, we have 20%, we have 25%, and the p-value is less than 1/1000th, right? So that's a lot less than 0.05. So there's obviously something going on with here. He breaks it down by experience and inexperience, and look what pops out. Those guys act just like dealers, okay? They act just like dealers. And these guys here, the ones who are still holding their spouse's hand, they're just barely willing to trade at all, right? They're randomly endowed with two, randomly, from their perspective, it's not like he selected Kansas City Royals fans, right? So you just value the thing that's just been stuck in your hand. Okay, so what do we do? Clearly, the endowment effect still happens for consumers. So the simple act of entering into a market environment doesn't solve the problem. Hang on a second. There's no endowment effect for dealers. Why? My best guess, I think everybody else's intuition is because they treat the goods as cash equivalent. No endowment effect for experienced non-dealers. This, I think, remains a puzzle. And I actually think that this research idea that you guys jointly came up with would be an interesting approach. Is it because market experience drives out the endowment effect and restores rationality, or is it because they also treat them as sort of tokens? Okay? It may be that literally just being in the market environment repeatedly would cause you to just sort of see that loss aversion is a dumb thing, okay, and to let it go. Now, this is not an incredibly impressive result, because presumably the people who were low-frequency traders in this market, presumably they had at some point or other in their life bought, let's say, cereal or shoes or something in a market, right? So apparently this is market-specific. So that doesn't represent, in my opinion, any kind of like Herculean or overarchingly powerful effect of market experience. But at least in the context of this specific market, it seems to matter a lot. Sorry, Lawrence, yeah. Which, of course, we know I'm not. Man, you have no idea how badly you just blew it. No, I'm just kidding. Because you affirmed my assertion that I'm not an expert in economics. Yeah, okay, that's why everybody laughed. Yeah, let's move on and get to the actual question.
So you actually use
An
an experienced dealer, but those numbers you
inexperienced dealer.
that was inexperienced.
Oh, that's a really interesting question. It turns out that varies from one sort of behavioral economics topic to another. There are some situations in which people, even trained behavioral economists, still get things wildly wrong, and others where actually the cognitive training makes a difference. Yeah, that's a fascinating question. Yeah, but the experience of being trained as a rational economist isn't the same as the experience of trading cards as a dealer, and they overlap in some ways and not in others. I don't know enough to give you a very satisfying answer to that question, which then affirms your original affirmation of my original assertion. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But at any rate, there remains a puzzle, which some of you may have noticed, which is this. We don't actually know from this experiment, does experience cause non-dealers to lose the endowment effect, or does lack of the endowment effect, right, cause non-dealers to trade more and gain more experience. We don't know which of these things causes the other. We all intuitively drew the same conclusion, which is that having been in the market more and more frequently causes people to drop the endowment effect. But it could very well be that there's heterogeneity in the population. Some people experience the endowment effect, some people don't, and the ones who don't are more likely to trade. We've already seen the fact that the endowment effect causes people to not want to trade. Right? So maybe it's a case of what's referred to as reverse causation or simultaneous causation, which is a form of endogeneity. Right? So endogeneity means generated within like an endoskeleton versus an exoskeleton. So something that is exogenous comes in from outside the system and is just arbitrarily determined. Hang on one second. Something that is endogenous is determined within the system. So what's going on here is we want to look at variation in experience in order to look at how that affects the endowment effect. But in fact, how much experience you have is determined within the same process that determines whether or not you have the endowment effect. So we can't separate these things apart in this cross-sectional experiment. Quickly, here and there.
Could you just take the experienced dealers and put them in a situation where they didn't have experience? And that's whether or not
Oh, just put them in a different market. Yeah, that's fair enough. But we want to know. Yeah, that would be interesting. But because we're then in two different domains, right? You're saying take them in a play like, I don't know, like a scuba gear sports, memorabilia show or something like that, right? That'd be interesting. But I think it asks a slightly different question than the one we care about because we observed the phenomenon in this market and we want to know what was going on in this market with that specific phenomenon. Does anybody else have an idea how to do this who hasn't turned the page or read the paper? Oh, I like that. Have different people from a different market come and trade here. There's a slight downside to that, which is that they probably don't care as much about sports cards. So, so what's the problem with that? Well, fine, they still should have preferences, right? But they're not the people we care about. We want external validity. We want to be able to say something about the impact of market experience on market actors, and people who don't care about sports cards and sports memorabilia are never going to be in the real world, which is what we care about in that market. Yes?
I might be grabbing straws a little bit, but could you look at something like salary, how people value their own time, and because that is introduced across a bunch of markets, you could. Okay, now you've gone over my. I can't jump high enough to catch that one. You think it through, send me an email. We'll figure out the answer. Okay, here's what List actually did. He did the exact same experiment with the exact same subjects 1 year later. Okay, so he just took the same people and dragged them into a different part of the universe. Okay, and fortunately for him, right, then he asked them, has your trading activity increased over the course of the year? Okay, so assuming that the endowment effect, right, you sort of at the beginning of the process, people have whatever level of endowment effect they have. You hold that initial level of endowment effect constant by keeping the people the same. You drag them through time. Some of them have increased their experience. Now, we're holding constant their original endowment effect. I'm looking at what happened to both their experience and their endowment effect a year later. So if we believe that it was their original level of endowment effect that caused them to have a difference in level of experience, we've now controlled for that. Because we're taking people and holding their level of endowment effect that might have determined their initial trading experience constant and see, does their trading experience change in a way that would be consistent with the endowment effect explanation. That will all make more sense in a second. Did you still have a hand up? You didn't? Somebody had? No, never mind. Okay. So what do we get? So here are the results. So experiment 1 is the first one, and experiment 3 is the one a year later. So he breaks the results down in an interesting way. And I'm going to try to break it down myself. So here are the people who do not engage in any trade in experiment 1. Okay? And then some of them do in experiment 2, and some in experiment 3, and some of them don't. Those people, let's see, what do I want to say? The results. Yeah, sorry. So this is, in the first experiment, we had 42 out of 53 people in the first experiment, which is 79%, did not trade. Okay, so those are the people who we think of as being by and large, those are the people who were impacted by the endowment effect originally. Okay? And then these people, which was 21%, the remainder, were the people who did trade in the first experiment, so we're going to call those the people who did not exhibit the endowment effect. Now, obviously, that's not perfectly correct, because you might have just genuinely not wanted to trade the card, because you actually are a Milwaukee Brewers fan or a Kansas City Royals fan. But leaving that aside, we're roughly bifurcating these into people who have the endowment effect and people who don't. Okay? And then what we want to know is, what happens to these folks who had the endowment effect? Okay, so there are some who have no trade in experiment 1, but they do trade in experiment 3. Looks like this group has moved from had the endowment effect to didn't have the endowment effect. And of those, right, there were 13 plus 1 plus 2, 16 of them, and of those, 13 had increased trades. So it seems like for people who go from endowment to no endowment effect, from endowment to no endowment effect, most of them are indeed people who increased the number of trades. Then we can look at this and say, okay, of the 42 people who had the endowment effect the first time around, 21 of them increased their number of trades, and of those, the majority, 13 out of 21, indeed shifted to not having the endowment effect. Okay, 2 pieces of evidence that both point towards an increase in experience, causing a reduction in your exhibiting the endowment effect. Yeah, and nothing about these people's original level of endowment effect has changed. So now I think List gets to claim a more robust answer to the question. Okay? Market experience seems to drive out the endowment effect. Now, it could be, we still don't know why. It could be because they've learned to treat these things as tokens. It could be because they have just adopted a more rational approach to trading for whatever reason. Okay, so there you go. Among those who did not trade in experiment 1, the ones whose number of trades increased were much more likely to trade in experiment 3. And among those who traded in both experiments, so that would be these people, trading experiment 1, trading experiment 3, all of them had an increase in experience over the course of the year. Yeah?
So does it seem like a sort of something off the as in you're successful at community trading, making money, so if you're doing it and scaling it up, and you're not successful making money, you're not getting trading cards, you're probably kind of deep.
So let me generalize your statement and see if you still are comfortable with it, which is that if your cognitive process in some sense, or your decision-making process, is influenced heavily by some form of irrationality, are you then just less likely to go out and become successful in the marketplace, particularly on the supply side of the marketplace? I think you're saying a version of that, right? That, hey, if you come into this without the endowment effect, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to trade more frequently. You're going to get more experience. It's going to drive out the endowment effect, and you're going to become sort of a John List type. And then if you start out with the endowment effect, you're going to shy away from the market. And you're never going to gain that experience, so you're going to be stuck with the endowment effect all your life. I'd never thought of that before. I bet you could write a model of that. I bet you're right. Yeah.
How much of this effect is due to conforming to observed norms? Because as they go to these conferences, they observe that they can't sell their favorite card for thousands of dollars because they like it. So they understand that it's not going to work. So it's like an observation.
Yeah.
It's a psychological thing rather than a
Or even a sociological thing. Say your name?
Sun Q.
So people just learn market norms. But you threw in an interesting thing, right? Again, which is selling. You said people won't buy it for whatever price they want. So again, you're assuming that they start selling. At which point, by the way, they become dealers. right? As soon as you start selling, you're a dealer. But the vast majority of us, in the vast majority of markets we participate in, are not dealers. We're just buyers, okay? And so this could begin to matter. I'm almost done, but not quite. Okay, so based on List's experiment, I'm just going to have to blast through this pretty quickly. I believe is my last slide. It's my second to last slide. We'll get through it. Based on List's experiment, it would seem that markets solve the rationality problem caused by the endowment effect reasonably well. Okay, reasonably well. However, watch this. This is an observational study, which is to say it's not experimental. It's based on a big data set. The condo market in Boston from 90 to 97. These guys got a massive data set of every single condo sale. Right? A condo is an apartment within a building that's treated as a freestanding unit that you can buy and sell. So they looked at every single sale. Owners. So here's the deal. Some owners, when they sell, are expecting a loss relative to what they bought the thing for, right? Because the value's gone down. Because the market is not great when they sell. So owners who face an expected loss relative to the price they originally paid, who we would expect, right, they're going below their reference point. They're going into the domain of losses. They listed their condos at a higher asking price, right? That's the supply curve, both initially and over time. They took longer to find a buyer. They were more likely to fail to find a buyer and take their condo off the market. They received a higher selling price when they did sell. That's good for them. But basically their part of the market didn't move in the way that the rest of the market did. Okay, so being in the domain of losses caused them to not trade in exactly the way that it caused the non-experienced consumers in the card market to not trade. Okay, so suggest buyers and sellers had reference-dependent preferences with loss aversion, and that there were fewer trades as a result. Did this increase or decrease social circles? We don't know, but most people in the housing market would say that's not a great thing. The effect was smaller among investor owners than among occupant owners. Exactly the same result as List got, except for this one thing: very few people gain a lot of experience in the condo market because it's a low-frequency market. Most people buy a dwelling only once or twice or a few times in their lives. Okay, so that's mostly what I want to say. This is all reiteration of the stuff about positive and normative. Economists have tried to salvage the normative value of the behavioral model. That was Knecht. I claim to have shot that down. Economists have tried to salvage the positive and normative value of the standard model, and basically the conclusion seems to be, yeah, that's a pretty good case in high-frequency markets where people get a lot of experience, but it seems to be only contextualized within that specific market. So then you take those people into another scuba gear market, and maybe they're going to exhibit the endowment effect again, and we still have to worry about the large and incredibly important low-frequency markets like the housing market or the marriage market or whatever. See you on Tuesday. Sorry for a minute. Wasted extra minute. Yes?
It's fine that I give experience.